I will say I'm informed by both my organizing work and my personal experiences, again, as a New York City public school parent. I want to just share my views on the NAACP's latest stance on the education of our children. I think, like Jeremiah and a few folks before me, I too am disappointed that the NAACP saw it fit to spend any time and energy really singling out schools, be they charter or district schools. I think it's really important that the NAACP, and so many of us, especially at a time like this, think about all the ways that we can be creative to put forth what's best for all children, whatever the way that method happens. I also have the pleasure of living in Harlem. I love Harlem. So if we take a charter management organization like Harlem Children's Zone, which is a world-renowned and revered, especially in my neighborhood of Harlem, I couldn't imagine anybody in the NAACP really believing, right, even though I heard some really interesting testimony, actually believing that a school, a system like Harlem Children's Zone, no, let's pause and wait and not let that grow. Right? This is a system, this is a school, a charter management organization that is educating, by and large, Black and brown students in Harlem, where the local neighborhood schools are educating children that are testing and reading. 1% of the children in that school are reading at grade level, right? This is in my neighborhood. The Sojourner Truth, Harriet Tubman, all the schools that are named after our great Black ancestors are oftentimes failing our children at tremendous rates. And then you have this beacon of hope like Harlem Children's Zone, which has an extraordinarily track record for educating our children. They're educating children on the mean streets of Harlem the same ways that folks in some suburban communities are educating white affluent students. And I can't imagine a world where the NAACP, and I'm a member of the NAACP, would ever think that it is okay and acceptable to say, no, let's pause and let's wait on that, right? Because we know the outcomes for our students, we know the outcomes for our Black boys oftentimes is prison, and there's equally as devastating outcomes like teen pregnancy for our daughters. So I couldn't imagine a world where the NAACP, right, my grandfather who just passed at 92 was the head of the NAACP in Milwaukee. I had the pleasure of being on the executive committee in Nashville. I was the head of the NAACP at Tennessee State University, which some might consider a segregated school. I would consider a historically Black school. And right, I can imagine a world where the NAACP would say, you know what, let's pause and let's have a moratorium on the Harlem Children's Zone or Community Roots in Brooklyn, or all these wonderful and lovely charter schools that are doing great work by our students. I couldn't imagine a world where we have been thorough in our thinking about how this actually impacts our students, real students, right? This doesn't exist in a world of PowerPoints and statistics. We have to remember that charters didn't just exist overnight because traditional district schools have been succeeding our children. We're all, many of us in this room who have come through traditional district schools are unicorns and anomalies. But we shouldn't begin to believe that because we came from a traditional district school, I have same mother, same father, grew up in the same housing project in the same room, and I got the opportunity to work for the Obama administration and work in the White House and get a master's degree. I live in a $2 million brownstone, and my brother is a 2-time felon. He also is a product of traditional district schools. So if we're gonna talk about the failures of the traditional district schools, let's talk about the 29 other students who I went to 3rd grade with who are dead or in prison.
Little Raheem, is in a charter school, and he cusses out Miss Jones, calls her a BI, whatever, all right? When the charter school kicks out Little Raheem for being belligerent, disrespectful, having behavioral issues, the school could send Little Raheem back to Jackie Robinson School, traditional public school. When Little Raheem cusses out Miss Johnson at Jackie Robinson, and calls her the same names, invites her to all that stuff that we know that happens in public schools, can they send little Raheem to the charter school?
I appreciate the comment and I think the question. So I don't have to go far for a little Raheem. I'll go to Nazir, who is my nephew, who looks just like me and brought a crack vial to school at 6 years old. He's 9 years old now because this is real stuff. So this is the mother. The mother is. This is my brother's son, right? He has his bouts with prison often, and the mother has found alternatives methods to make money. Let's just say that, right? And so the school has called number of times, right? We need to get a hold of somebody. We need to get a hold of somebody. He's done multiple things. He's hit kids. He's hit teachers. He's done a number of different things. This is in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, so it's obviously not the same situation. He didn't necessarily go to back to a traditional district school. What happened was, and we see this in traditional district schools, is they arrested him, right? And so I think if we want to have a real conversation, let's have a conversation about the criminalization that's happening in traditional district schools that I think the NAACP should be very much invested in, right? And so, is it fair that charter schools are sending children to traditional district schools if something goes awry? I think you and I both know that no, that isn't, right? But I think the truth is, and what I implore the NAACP to be invested in, deeply invested in, is how do we look at schools, right, to Dr. Steve Perry's point, that are not doing well by our children, whether they are charter schools or district schools, and let's interrogate that to no end and make sure that the folks who are running those schools understand that we will never let up because our kids are extraordinarily important. But there are traditional district schools, and I think you and I can go through a gamut of examples that are allowing teachers in the schools that are feeling on students' breasts, and the students have to go back to the school the next day, and that teacher is not fired because of the union laws and the union contract. Let's talk about the student in Baltimore who was hit and punched by a marginalized mother who seemed extraordinarily low income, right? And let's talk about the fact that these are teachers and principals who are still staying in our schools. I can run through a gamut of stories of parents who are going to schools, traditional district schools, and they are being arrested because they're asking for their children's report cards. So for me, I think your question is really important, but it highlights again for me that it is not a difference between Oh, I did answer the question. I said you and I both know. No, I said no. I said you and I both know that we know that is not right, and that is happening, and that is not necessarily fair. Absolutely, we need to fix it. But what I'm saying is that I would like us to also stretch our minds to understand not just the other issues, but the whole perspective. We're talking about, and I think it's important, I don't want to negate the importance of it, we're talking about a population, a community that serves 10% of our children nationwide. And my plea to the NAACP is that we have room in our hearts and our minds to also think about the ways in which the 90%, come on 90%, somebody, okay? Let's think about the 90% and how the 90% is also disenfranchising, maligning, and criminalizing our students.